Welcome to Selling Circular, the podcast dedicated to exploring the innovative minds and business models shaping our transition to a circular economy. I'm Gar Punnett, CEO of LoopLayer.
I'm Sabira Lakhani, VP of Product at SpareTech.
This was a fun one. We were really excited. This is an old friend. You'll hear that come through in this podcast. We were really thrilled to bring you a conversation with Ryan Smith, founder of Recyclops, a company you may not have heard of yet, but a company that nonetheless is revolutionizing how recycling reaches communities that need it most. Here's kind of a startling fact, and it applies to my wonderful hometown. At least 60% of apartments in the United States don't have access to recycling, even in cities where it's legally mandated. And also in rural and suburban America, the gap is even wider. So that sucks for
That's
Chicago.
wild.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like a real problem here.
Yeah. And so Ryan's journey started with that frustration. He moved into an apartment. He was surprised it didn't have a recycling bin, and that has turned into a 12-year mission to solve this stubborn waste management problem, which is something we've talked about before on this podcast, which is the economics of low density collection.
I loved watching your face in the interview when he said, I think he said, and everyone, I'm pointing it out now, watch Severa's face, because I think there's a subtle moment where he goes like, oh, I've been working on this since like 2012, and you go, oh, yes, this is a problem. Like you've been grinding on this. And so I just love that because again, this is a man who's been working really hard on trying to figure out this problem. And so in this episode, you'll hear how Ryan spent a full year chasing his first customer and then learned the hard way that his assumptions about pricing maybe were completely wrong. And ultimately why he resisted the temptation to hire when really he just needed to get his hands dirty. And in this case, again, in the recycling world, quite literally get his hands dirty.
We also got into some, I would say, happily surprising territory. Think gig economy drivers picking up dirty diapers from doorsteps for composting. One of my also favorite moments
Right.
from this episode. And also how chance LinkedIn connections can lead to partnerships with major brands, helping to tackle everything from recalled merchandise to plant-based packaging. Like the breadth of material that they touched was so surprisingly impressive.
Yes. And I think that's what's rare is I think even though recycling is in the name of Recyclops, Ryan's willingness to solve the dirty problems and work with brands and work with other organizations to try to come to a resolution, it's pretty impressive. So it was really fun to share that. I would say, so Ryan really shares what it took to scale from 5 states to 30 in just 18 months and offers kind of a bold prediction on where materials management is actually headed. So whether you're an entrepreneur, again, a sustainability professional, or someone who's wondering why your building doesn't actually have recycling, I think this one delivers. Here's the caveat. Hear me out on this one. I asked a question about the start story, and we got a slow start into this podcast, but boy, does it ramp up. So I'm excited about you to hear the beginning, the middle, and the end, because it's fun, and we get into some really cool details.
Stick with us in our conversation with Ryan Smith.
Love that. Ryan, the first time I had you on a podcast was with the Multi-Usiverse podcast. It's been a couple years, and I feel like it has to be maybe it's some sort of double-edged sword that last time you were on the podcast, your beard was not as long, but there's got to be some sort of inherent wisdom in the recycling world that you've gained. I mean, is that sort of a,
No,
does that come with that?
No, it doesn't grow with time. It grows with knowledge. So
Got it. Okay, perfect. Knowledge, so recycling knowledge. So I just wanted the audience to know that. So if you're listening, you should picture that a very knowledgeable guest here in the recycling world, given beard length. It's great to have you back. It's good to see you. Yeah, exactly. Me too, Sabira. We're in the same boat, unfortunately.
it comes with its own problems. I think I'm likely shaving it off in January. So
Okay.
this is 13 months of unmanicured. I haven't shaved anything but trimmed around the mouth.
Wow.
It's good. It's great. Well, excellent. Well, with that, I would love to introduce, I mean, really quickly, because I want to introduce the audience to Recyclops, to you, but I don't want to do that sort of at length I think what's really interesting and how maybe we can start with that is a brief start story mixed in with the maybe the early lessons you learned when you were the one picking up the recycling and you actually had to be the one in a car, in a vehicle doing that work. I would love a mix of that early start with when you what you were learning when you had to go do that thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I started Recyclops. Really, the idea came when I moved into an apartment that didn't have recycling. And I grew up in suburbia. I grew up in a neighborhood that had recycling. And I was then in college and living in off-campus housing. I'd done a year, I'd done my freshman year on campus and was now off campus. And um, there was no recycling. I remember I bought a bottle of Sprite on campus from a vending machine, walked home, went to throw it in the recycling, and it's like, oh, we don't have a recycle bin. I'm brand new in this apartment. No one bought a blue bin. Sweet. Let's go out to the recycle dumpster. There was none. And I was just confused. I was like, what kind of backwards place is this? And I was living in like this crappy apartment. And I was like, man, I didn't realize it was this crappy. Um, and then I started like going on dates and hanging out with friends. And every time I'd go to someone's apartment, before I'd go up to their apartment, I'd poke my head in the dumpster enclosure, take a look and see there was never recycling. And that blew my freaking mind. I just like was like, what on earth is this? And decided, I think I want to start something in this space. And I didn't actually pull the trigger on starting it for 2 years after that initial kind of like aha moment. But 2 years later, I decided, I want to start a business.
Now circa what year?
This is 2013. So 2011 had the initial idea, probably September 2011. And then in 2013, really probably like May, June, had this, I was actually doing an internship for a startup, and I just saw that the founders weren't like super genius freaks who were so much better than me at everything. They were just normal humans. And that was empowering because it was like, oh, oh, the only difference between them and me is like they jumped in with 2 feet. And so I decided, hey, let's do it. And so that summer, I was actually living in Brazil. It was for a startup in Brazil. I was living in Brazil and I started making phone calls to the United States from Brazil, calling apartments and like asking questions and interviewing people and learning about the space and doing tons of online research. And I got back to the US and started trying to sell to apartments and doing this. And, you learn really quickly. One of the first lessons I learned in all of this was um, that any assumption you make, you need to test, and because it's certainly wrong. One of the first ones I found a student group that had done a survey of all these students and um, they identified several hundred students and had asked them, hey, are you willing to pay for recycling? And how much are you willing to pay? And all the students said yes. And I was like, this is money. Each student's willing to pay a couple bucks.
Easy. Easy.
Easy. So I'm like, okay, cool. Now I need to go to an apartment owner and show them this data. So I show them this data. I'm like, hey, each student's willing to pay $2. There's 4 students to a room. I'm making $8, or maybe it was 3. I'm making $8 a door. You have 100 doors. I'm making $800. And I'm gonna go pick up your recycling. The students are happy, and he goes, a couple things. One, like, are all the students happy? It's like, well, most of them are. Um, and then it's like, it's only $2. They're paying $800 a month for rent, or $600 for rent. Like now they're paying 602. Like they're gonna be okay, right? But he said, oh well, I'm only paying 350 for trash. And it was like, oh, he's not thinking about trash per door. everything I had thought about was per door. And I'd done all my modeling, all my thinking about per door. And in that first meeting, I realized the person who I'm selling to doesn't think about those types of utilities, group utilities, on a per door basis. And that basically all of the work and the beautiful presentation that I had made,
Of course.
was useless. And so I, had to start fresh. And it took me 12 months before I got my first sale.
Mm.
And I was like sneaking into landlord conferences and asking the organizers if I could, address everyone. And they told me, yeah, I guess, but you can't tell them, like, you can't like sell for your company, but you can like tell them that you're a student and that students care about recycling. And if they want to talk to you after. And so it's like, I'm doing this stuff. Finally, at like a tabling event where landlords were trying to sell like all the, housing close to campus. They all, had like a fair, and all the students would come and like look around, and the landlords would try and sell students on coming to live there. I went there, and I went to every table and did the opposite.
Tried to sell them.
them, and I got my first sale. It was 12 months later. I have my first dollar from that sale right there. Went to the bank and cashed, deposited everything but $1 and pulled that out and framed it. But it went like it was a journey. And then from there, I bought a truck, and I didn't have anything to actually do the job that I signed a contract to do. I
Naturally.
had to go and like get that stuff. So I went and got like an old, like it was actually like it was owned by the university, but it was like a U-Haul style box, like little box truck thing. Bought that and in a university auction. And paid for it in student loans. And started driving around doing these pickups. I had a job. I actually, between my freshman and sophomore years, I'd lived in Russia for 2 years. And so I had a job teaching Russian. And so that was my job. I was working 20 hours a week doing that. I was doing classes. And then on the side, I was picking up recycling in this truck. And it was a party. And one of the things I wanted to do immediately, and this is one of those those lessons I learned early on, was I wanted to hire someone. I wanted to hire a driver. The reality is I didn't need a driver. I needed to learn the business.
Yep.
And I wanted to hire a driver because it would make me feel legit. Like, it wouldn't be good for the business. It would have been like good for my ego.
I love that lesson.
And so I was, to not my credit, to mentors around me who said, no, wait to hire. Just go hire as slow as you can. And, one of the things I found is that I needed to become an expert in this field. And the best way was getting my hands dirty, literally, and learning the problems and learning this. And it made it so much easier for me to sell the service. And, a couple of years in, it's like, I'm still a student, and I'm making, $60,000 a year as a student, working part-time, picking up recycling. And, it was great.
Do you remember what convinced the first customer to come on board? Like, what
Yeah.
was the value prop for them?
Yeah.
Especially because it sounds like recycling is not common in this area. People don't
Yeah. I
care.
mean, well, if you look at, I should highlight that if you look at apartments in the United States, recycling doesn't happen. In Chicago, for example, recycling is mandated at apartments. If you go to mybuildingdoesn'trecycle.com, I think that's the name, it's a map, and it's illegal. It's freaking illegal, and it's a map of all these people reporting. The map's just
That's
full.
wild. Yeah, it's just full of apartments
So
that
at least 60% of the apartments in the United States don't have recycling, and that's including places where it's mandated and where there is, some of those places have a little bit of enforcement, most don't. So I want to just highlight that, like, where I was living, unfortunately, was not unique. And that was one of those early findings of like, oh, this is an opportunity. Like, both from like as a sustainability minded and environmentally minded person, and as an entrepreneurially minded person, like, oh, I can make a big impact and I can build a big business. And so
Uh,
that was a big, big piece of that. I forget exactly what your original question was, though. I got
no, no,
sidetracked.
no. You did answer it, and maybe that was to Sabira, but I want to bridge the gap here for the audience on where you are. So you're starting this in Utah,
Yep.
starting this in a part of the country that largely is rural. There is an urban core, there is suburban sprawl, but there is very much rural connectivity between those
Totally.
suburban. Yes,
Go
yes,
ahead.
and so that is that model right now that Recyclops is really then where you in that early years are trying to figure out. Well, then how do I balance those economics in that both urban core sprawl and then rural areas. And so that's where I love that first sort of thinking is, oh wow, this is an apartment problem within potentially even a rural and sprawl problem.
No, 100%. This we saw that this apartment problem existed both in a major metro and in a minor metro and in an urban sprawl scenario, all of the above. And that was fascinating. Thinking about how that first, if I remember how that first customer came online. That I remember, really, I learned a valuable lesson there too about who my customer was and why they were making a decision. At the end of the day, there were three reasons why an apartment complex would sign up for recycling, and only three reasons. One was because ownership cared. That
Wow.
that's key. If an owner cared and they looked at this and said, "This is the right thing to do, I'm going to do it," that would do it. Two, if management cared. Management could convince ownership it was the right decision.
Hmm.
And then lastly, if tenants cared enough and basically, I can say petitioned, but they wouldn't really sign a petition, but they would pester management or ownership enough, then it would also happen. So it's like, but it all came down to like someone caring. It wasn't like, oh, if you do this, you're going to save money. They weren't going to. It would be cheaper for them to have a single service provider and dump everything in the trash. And so it came down to the fact that someone had to care. And so that first property that we made things happen with, the real trick was we found a manager, we found a decision maker that cared. And we had to find someone for this first customer, we had to find someone that really cared, because they not only had to sign up for recycling, they had to be the first customer for an unknown business. And like, we would always have to ask, like, oh, who else are you working with? And we would be like, we're in talks with lots of places. And they're
Yes.
like, sweet. Well, who is signed up? And it's like, well, you could be the first. Uh, but here's the magical thing. And what I remember most about that first one is actually not the first one. It's the second one. And that is because I got the first one. They signed on, and immediately I called one of our other properties that was on the fence, and I said, the elms are in. And they said, sign us up.
Excellent.
And so immediately I launched those two customers on the same day. And it took me a year to get one, and it took me 10 seconds to get two.
That's excellent. I mean, that speaks to a density problem, right? That speaks to now you're actually now going, oh, I've just built some amount of supply, some amount of material that I'm going to be collecting from a similar region. However, I want to now accelerate us a little bit into some learnings around. I mean, we've heard this guests from guests, audience. To some degree, a lot of the recycling problems have to deal with density when it comes to populations and how efficiently you can collect material that is of value. But we're dealing with a different set of unit economics here, which is low density areas potentially, and that have materials that are, again, coming from streams that, and maybe streams, I'm thinking of streams in nature, but kind of almost literally streams coming from different communities around mountain communities in your case, and
Yep.
that might actually be sort of needing to be collected and brought back. Can you talk a little bit about how you then transitioned from maybe those apartment deals to then getting another deal on the other side of town, or getting another deal on maybe another side of the state, but ultimately how you were able to sort of understand those economics to treat the low density areas and make that profitable for you, because that's kind of where you made your mark. I mean, I don't want to
Oh,
speak for
totally.
you in that way, but like that was a big industry problem, is they weren't going to the areas you were servicing because they didn't really want to do that work to figure out how to
No,
make it work.
100%. So, we started with these apartments and really, saw that the problem was an access issue because of where you live. And we said, that's a problem to solve. And so we started trying to grow this among apartments that really long sales cycle, really, not the easiest place to sell in the model, with the model we had, and really struggled to grow the business and kind of would hit these thresholds. So started looking at, hey, where else is this same problem prevalent? And in time, we found that the problem existed in these more para-urban slash rural environments where you're still in, it's kind of more still urban sprawl, but it's like you're really starting to sprawl.
Yeah.
Like you're getting far away from that urban center. And recycling doesn't exist suddenly at a residential level. You live in a single family home, suddenly recycling doesn't exist. And that blew my mind just as much as the initial apartment. Like, what? My apartment doesn't have recycling? To see that, like, a municipal government wouldn't provide that service for their citizens was bonkers for me. And so I started trying to figure out how do we solve this? I first actually saw the problem when I encountered a small family-run business that had been doing it for a decade. They would drive around in their Suburban and trailer and pick up recycling, and they'd done it for a decade. There's kind of a way to teach the kids how to work and earn some money. The kids had all grown up, and they had 3 boys, and the mom was left kind of doing this, and she was like, "Ugh, this was a lot more fun when was teaching my 3 boys to work." But she doesn't want to cancel recycling for her community.
Right.
And so they found us and said, "Hey, any interest in taking this over?" And that was my first exposure to this like municipal problem. But I very quickly, realized, and had the thought, this has got to just like my apartment was not unique. This community is not unique. There's no way that like I found this like unicorn community. If this community doesn't have recycling, all the communities like it don't have recycling, at least most of them. And did a little bit of research and saw the initial research was like, yep. And then we did a random survey of 1,000 cities in the US. And based on that, we saw something like 34% of single family homes don't have recycling. Or no, 34 million, sorry, I'm trying to remember. 34
Right.
million single family homes don't have recycling. And that was already on top of the approximate 16 million apartment homes. And I was like, oh my gosh, 50 million households between those two. One, I thought, oh man, I just found a bigger market than the one I was in.
Yeah.
This is a bigger problem to solve. And I can solve them both. But suddenly it's 50 million households. There's like 140 million households in the US. It's like, what? Like, are you kidding me? Like, that's more than a third of households in the US don't have, and it's not that they're choosing not to recycle. It's that they don't have recycling pickups available to them. There might be a community
It's not
drop
even
off.
an option. Yeah.
That's exactly right. It's not even an option. Like, yeah, maybe they can drive it somewhere. But like people, yes, a couple people do that. I might do that. But like most people aren't doing that. Convenience is king. And so, really started looking at that problem and thinking, man, how do I tackle this? And I think often how good ideas come is you marry other people's ideas and you put them together. And the two ideas that got married and had a little baby here were the way that New York City does recycling, which is kind of ugly. You put bags out on the curb and you have your bundled cardboard and Uber. One of the problems that we had with collection in these markets was garbage trucks cost 400 grand, that time like 300 something grand. And not every household is signing up. You're far away from a recycling drop off. These trucks are getting 2 to 3 miles a gallon. Like the unit economics just weren't going to, would have a hard time getting there if every household is signed up, but definitely not when you're just trying to start something from scratch in a community that's never had it. But we thought, hey, there's vehicles in every community. This company, this like little family run business that I bought, they were using a Suburban and a trailer. Like, what if I just kind of did that, but I didn't own the Suburban? What if instead of being in bins where you have to dump something, what if it was just in a bag that anyone can pick up and put in any vehicle? And we tested it. And Christmas, it's time. We did our first test the week of Christmas, in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, for that. So I've been doing this other part of the business. I've been in this for 5 years. Like, it's not like this was brand like, oh, a couple weeks later. It was like, no, this is years of work. And finally being like, okay, I gotta search other markets and do this. And we at Christmas time we did it because I just told all the customers, if you have extra stuff, which everyone does at Christmas, flatten your boxes and put them to the side. And put any bags, just bag the stuff and put it to the side. And so people did that instead of putting it in their little bins that we would dump. And I had 2 drivers. I had a regular driver go around and pick up bins and dump them like he normally would. And then I got my wife's cousin in his pickup truck. And I said, hey, and he went and did all these pickups in his pickup truck, and he just picked up the bags and the loose cardboard. I said, you just pick up the bags and the loose cardboard. And that was the experiment, and just kind of ran the numbers of how it worked. And it was like, that could work. In March, we launched in a new community that was 3 hours away. I chose a community that was 3 hours away, not only because it was a community that was a decent enough size and didn't have access, like met all the criteria, but also it was 3 hours away, which was close enough that if crap hit the fan, I could go save the day.
Yes.
Far enough away that I would try really hard to not have to.
So what I love about that story, and I think you're exactly right, it was good to look at all those options. And I want to just interject here, Sabir, with a little bit of my personal timeline in this.
Oh,
That community that was 3 hours away I was interviewing for a role at Recyclops, and Ryan picked me up from the airport and was like, "Hey, buddy, we're going here. We're going this way." And that was about February of like 2018-ish.
Yes.
Or 2019. I can't remember the exact year, but I remember going on that little road trip. And we went to go visit, I think, one of those sites. And but what I love about that, and while I didn't get the job, audience, I got a good friend out of the mix. It was so cool to see you in action making those decisions live. And you were explaining to me then, it's like, this just made sense. This is a natural extension of a founder being able to say, this is as far as I can personally address this problem and do this in a sort of a quick way, and have a solution ready to go. So I just love that sort of where I interact with that storyline.
150%.
Yeah.
I remember that drive well.
Yeah, there you go.
So we set this community up, and the cool thing was, March I launched this community, and by October or November, we had 18 municipalities that were online.
Wow.
Wow.
Now these aren't like I'm not signing municipal contracts. I'm going in, it's direct consumer, it's whatever. We're getting
Yes.
a small percentage of households, but like it worked.
Well, Sabira, I would love your question on this, but I think just to highlight for the audience that again, the distinction here that Ryan just made was municipal contracts taking a while to sign, convince the right municipal leaders sometimes that this is the program they need, and they're going to say, "Oh, but we need to issue an RFP, and then we can then do that." And then really, you just want to go, "I actually don't need you. I just need to go talk to the households." And while you only might get a small amount of households, they're going to tell their neighbors, the word might get around,
Well,
your truck's going to be going around picking up trash, and then please, what's your wisdom there?
yeah, well, if you think back to what I said at the very beginning with that first conversation I had with the landlord. The household was willing to pay a lot more than the housing block, right? And think about that as a municipality and a neighbor and an individual. That an individual household was willing to pay a lot more than a municipal contract would charge each household. And so even though I was getting a lot less households, which is a bummer, I would like to get more households. Financially, we were able to make this make sense because each individual household had a higher willingness to pay than the municipal contract would have had per household.
That is fascinating. Is that just like early adopter mentality that they like going back to like they cared and so
I
like they
think
don't
part,
see
I
it
think
as a
part of that,
utility?
but I think also the municipality has to factor in people who don't care. And the
Yeah.
way that they appease those people is by trying to have the price as low as possible.
Yeah.
Right. So that like in order
Mm.
for the municipality to like not make waves, they need this to be as low as possible. You don't really have to worry about making waves when people are signing up. And so, like, we're getting all of the people who are willing to pay more. So
Yeah.
maybe they are early adopters, but some of them were just adopters. Like, they were like, oh, I used to recycle when I lived in X city. I moved back here to,
Mm, mhm.
I used to recycle when I went to college. I went and got a corporate job for a couple years, recycled. I've now moved back to my hometown. There's not recycling. It feels crazy to me. I hate it. And like, they're not even who you'd think of, like, oh, they're a traditional early adopter. They're just someone who had some exposure and they're like, sweet, $10, $20, cheap. Let's do it.
It's
That's
so
fun.
interesting, like, the distinction here is between private and public goods, right? And, like, in the public good, you're accounting for everybody, and you get the volume, and the trade-off here is that in the private world, you get the folks who care, you get the dollar, but you don't get the volume.
Yeah. What would I rather have? I'd rather have the volume because the impact of that. The nice thing about the smaller piece though is you get really clean recycling.
Yeah.
And just the way that our system is like you can't think about like a traditional garbage truck. It's really easy to hide something in that bin. You can put a toilet in there. Nobody knows. Our drivers are like, Uber style drivers. I think they're not picking up toilets, right? We skip a lot of the stuff that would normally contaminate a load. We
Ah.
naturally have a lot cleaner. And actually, the bags, we do this bag
Mm.
based program, which a lot of places, you think, oh, bags, bad for recycling, bad. We build the program around it. And one of the things that's funny with it is it also prevents cross contamination. So your neighbor's a bad actor. You follow all the rules. Your bins get emptied right next to one after the other. They get smashed together. Doesn't matter who the bad actor was. Both of your stuff gets their yucky whatever on it. Um, when it's bagged, your problem is self-contained in your bag. And that's a pretty powerful thing too. So we found that we have really clean recycling streams, kind of
So
frankly
fascinating.
unintentionally, you know,
Yeah.
certainly impacted by who is signing up, but also how we're doing pickups. And so we went on just to fast forward a little bit, decided, hey, we've got a model here. We've got something that works. And so I didn't bring on any. significant amount of outside capital until we reached $1 million in revenue. We were in 5 states at that point and reached $1 million in revenue, and 5 states is generous. We were doing like a couple border towns where we'd like get a couple spots on the other side of the border,
But
but
you got Arizona.
that's
You
exactly right.
got them. Yeah.
Yep. And so we were in 5 states doing this. We hit the $1 million in revenue in March of 2020 and decided, oh, we're going to go raise money. Well, March of 2020 had other things in mind for the world. And so we did not raise venture capital in March of 2020. And we just held on tight, and March of 2021 came around and we raised a few $1 million in venture capital. And then in 2021 to mid 2022, we grew from 5 states to 30 states in about an 18-month period. And really, reaching like 700 zip codes, and really just scaled that up drastically. And I think became best in class at small pickups. We've done millions of these small like gig economy recycling pickups, and we really learned how to do that, and that started opening other doors for us outside of that work.
That kind of leads us into, I think I would love somewhere in there. You've now gone from, you've gone back and forth, right? B2B, B2C. Now there's bigger B2B players than maybe an apartment building management group.
Yep.
Now you're in the scale where you can start to have conversations with brands. So at what point now are you sort of thinking, oh, I see the proper signals where I can maybe go pitch myself, or do they come to you with sort of unique solutions because you've perfected small batch and they might have a small batch problem, but they're sort of a bigger brand? What's that process like?
Yeah, we stumbled into it. So the way
Great, the best kind.
Yep. The way that it first happened was I was looking for a board member. And one of the investors we were talking to, he said, hey, you should talk to Ben Chesler. Ben's on our board now, great guy. And Ben was one of the co-founders of Imperfect Foods. He's like, hey, you should talk to Ben. Ben, he's like, I'm on a board. I'm one of the investors in Imperfect Foods, and I'm on the board with Ben. Ben was no longer in an operational role at not Recyclops, at Imperfect Foods, which has now been acquired by Misfits Market, and they're a single brand. But Ben was on the board, and so I wanted to understand what Ben was like as a board member. So I asked, hey, I want to speak to the current CEO of Imperfect, to talk to him about Ben and to understand what he thinks. So I met with Philip, last name Ben, so funny. Enjoyed that. But I spoke to Philip, their CEO, and just asked really to talk about Ben, to see if he would be a good fit as a board member for Recyclops. And as I told him about our business, he was like, we could use you.
That's a cool back way to fall into that.
Yeah. Essentially, he came and said like, hey, the problem that you're solving is a difficult recycling problem, basically. And what that problem consists of, and I didn't fully understand this at the time, is that I'm having to pick something up, I'm having to find a home for it, and then I'm having to do what it takes to get it from A to B. And he was like, hey, we have this, we deliver food to people's homes, and we have these ice packs, and we have these bubble wrap silver bags, and we've done the life cycle assessment. We've seen that these plastic bags are lower impact than a paper solution that we could have, but the consumer doesn't always feel that, and we want to try and keep it out of the landfill. It doesn't. We can't always put it in store drop off or things like that. So like, what do we do? It's this, as the silver oxidized aluminum layer makes it difficult. And one of the things about working in rural America with recycling is we had to get really good at finding recycling outlets. And they're not like they're not optimizing SEO. Like,
They are
these
not.
places aren't making it easy for them. No, they do not make it easy to find. And so we had gotten pretty dang good at finding these types of places. And so we thought, oh, well, this is just basically the same thing. Just instead of finding a normal outlet, we just find a weird outlet. And so we said, let's do it. And we started doing it. And then we started having other brands approach us. And, we had our former lawyer, who is now general counsel at a solar firm, say, hey, they're throwing, any solar panel that gets broken on a job and during an install gets thrown away. They have all these little copper wire ends that are just getting thrown away at the end of a job because they're just doing the job. And they have these giant pallets that are like oversized and these corner protectors and these all this waste that they're just throwing away. And we have 20 something warehouses around the country. And it's like, oh, we can help with that. And probably my favorite program that came along in this same mix. And this one was from my brother posted about Recyclops on LinkedIn, and one of his friends from business school saw the post. And
Can you say which brother?
Yeah. So his name's Davis Smith. He's the founder and CEO of Cotopaxi. Well, he's not the CEO. That's lies. He's the founder of Cotopaxi, former CEO.
Yeah.
At the time of
so
this,
he's got some reach.
Yeah. He's got some reach. Yep. He's got a great LinkedIn presence and, frankly, killer mentor. Lucked out. It's cheating. But he posts about me on LinkedIn, and one of his buddies reaches out and says, hey, I work for a diaper company and we make plant-based diapers. Your average Huggies, Pampers, whatever diaper has as much plastic as 2 plastic water bottles. We made a cleaner, more sustainable diaper, but we went a level beyond that. We made sure it could be composted, and we want to set up national composting collection for these diapers. We're doing it in the Bay Area already with our own trucks, but what if you used your gig economy expertise and went and picked up dirty diapers from doorsteps?
What's that brand, just for parents?
No, totally. It's called Diaper, Dyper. And
or expecting parents is what she's alluding to. Yes.
Love it. The pickup program is called Rediaper. Rediaper is just Recyclops. So we do all the Rediaper pickups. We pick up dirty diapers from doorsteps every week. I have 2 kids in diapers right now. I wish it was only one, but she's a punk. And so my diapers got picked up today, put them out on my doorstep, and a Recyclops driver came by, picked them up, put them in their own vehicle, brought them to an aggregation point.
Wow.
We store them by the pallet. Once we get enough pallets full, we ship those pallets to specialty composters. Not every composter can handle human waste or can handle industrial grade compostables. And so we send it off to those facilities, and in 3 months, that's dirt.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so it's my favorite program. I think it's so cool. When they asked, can you do this? I was like, probably. So we did a pilot. I went and did the first set of pickups myself. Me and a couple other employees, and that was great. And then we had to figure out, how do you store these? How does that work? I stored a pallet of dirty diapers, like 800 pounds of dirty diapers, in my garage for like 6 months. My wife, it was her idea because she's the most supportive human on the planet.
She's incredible. Yes.
She was like, you just store in your garage. I was like, what? Okay. I mean, if you say yes, like, I'm not going to say no. And not as bad as you would think, which is one of the great lessons that we learned from that program. And so we scaled that. Now we operate everywhere. Actually, this year, I think it was this year, we actually took over, finally, after multiple years of doing this, their San Francisco operations, where they were doing it with their own fleet. We took over the fleet, and we do it ourselves now. We operate LA to New York City, San Francisco, Chicago. We do pickups of dirty diapers from doorsteps.
Fascinating.
All of these places.
I was actually in the market for a diaper solution, not
And
for myself.
it is,
Yeah, I mean, this is I had not heard
yeah,
of this
it's
at all. We need to talk about re-diaper more.
now it is honestly, and I'm biased, obvious, like certainly, but it's so freaking cool. Instead of making a better solution for the landfill, they thought outside the box and say, how about we skip the landfill? But I've tried cloth diapering. I've done cloth diapering. It is very challenging. And part of cloth diapering is you need if you're a two-parent household, you need both parents to be all in. And that's not always going to happen. And so this is that middle ground that it's really convenient for when you're out and about. And one of these does, I'm at someone's house and whatever, it ends up going to the landfill. You cannot feel that bad about it compared to your traditional plastic diaper. And so really, really cool program. But it's like these first enterprise level contracts just kind of landed in our lap. And then we started getting some word of mouth and growing that, bringing on people like Grove Collaborative and bringing on, these other brands that were like-minded, and Once Upon a Farm and, all these different brands. And then we said, hey, I think we need to start marketing this. So we started doing lead gen, those like cold emails that you get in your inbox that you don't love. Sorry.
They
Um,
work.
they work so well. Man, they work so well. We've crushed it with lead gen. It has been awesome. And so we send out these lead gen emails. And one of the things that we've seen is so powerful for us is referrals. Even like we now do a major program in the retail space with Amazon. And it's a fairly, we started that this year, and huge props to Amazon for, frankly, they could just send this stuff to the landfill. And I think that's what is happening in most of retail. But Amazon, they put out an RFP, and we got connected into Amazon and kind of got in their system because someone at Hill's Pet Nutrition said, oh, you should talk to my buddy at Amazon. Had some conversations there. We got into the system. Nothing ended up happening initially. And they ended up sending us to, nothing was happening initially. And then I get an RFP email out of nowhere, and it is for unsellable retail merchandise. So it's, dead inventory. It's going to be things like something that gets recalled. What happens if something's in an Amazon distribution center and gets recalled? Like, it goes to the landfill. It
Yep.
generally, like historically, that's what happens when something's in a distribution center and it gets recalled. Like, what else do you do with it? What if it is counterfeit? Someone makes something and then there's a cease and desist. Hey, that's a copycat. What do you do?
The scale of Amazon. That's a big
Yep.
problem.
No, 100%. And you start looking, what about safety things like a helmet or a car seat? That gets returned. Can you resell it? I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but I think there's some problems there, right? The mascara's been opened. What do you do? Like, and then that's not even touching, someone way overproduced something more than you could ever donate or liquidate. What do you do? Like, man. So, the first thing that is people, any business has the opportunity to do is liquidate. Can we liquidate this? And then can we donate it? And if they say, hey, we don't want to liquidate it, we don't want to donate it, we can't liquidate, we can't donate. Third option is now recycle. And our job with Amazon is to keep 100%, not 99%, to keep 100% of what we get out of landfill. And so we send we have these facilities now all, spread throughout the country, where we are depackaging and dismantling product and sorting it of all flavors, anything you can imagine, and keeping it out of a landfill. And we don't even have landfill dumpsters at our facilities. Literally don't even have dumpsters. There's no landfill. We do send some stuff waste to energy. There's all sorts of stuff that hard to do with in a cost effect, at least somewhat cost effective. Even stuff that if there's some stuff you don't even know what to do with no matter what. And
Yep.
then there's some stuff that it's like, oh, it's going to cost 100x. Like, okay, well, maybe waste energy is the solution today. Um, but we keep that out of landfill, and huge props to them, because this could be, they could just landfill it, and they've said no, we want to be better, and really pioneering in the retail space.
Huh.
You know,
No,
uh, so pretty cool.
that's huge. I think I would love, Sabira, before you round us out with one of your questions here on, well, I'll let you do it, but I would love maybe a prediction, Ryan, a little bit on what sort of the bold prediction you might make for the waste management, or as you put it actually before I interviewed, the materials management space in the next 5 years. We have some big technology things. We have big things that are happening as we look forward. But what do you think? How is this space going to change in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I think a couple things. Obviously, AI is going to play a big role in helping divert more things into the proper places, helping sort things better, and also even helping us package things better. We're also seeing regulatory things with extended producer responsibility laws, where businesses are being held accountable for the um, essential, you know, supplements that they've been getting from local governments in the form of cheap landfills. And so we're going to see more and more of that. And that's going to increase recycling rates and really increase access to the first problem that we had to solve as a business in the residential sphere. And then I think in spaces like retail, we're going to see more and more. And in spaces like construction and demolition, we're seeing and we're working with some big players in these spaces. And those players are not going to stand alone for long. Other businesses see this and consumers demand it. And, you see an article about a retailer saying, hey, look at all this stuff that gets thrown away. Look at this. And the retailer say, hey, we got to do better. We our consumers deserve to do better. Our planet deserves to do better. We as a business can do better. And so they try and step up, and we see this happening, from manufacturing, from construction and demolition, from certainly retail. And so I would expect just major advances, particularly in those spaces, in landfill diversion, which I'm excited about. I mean, we're keeping across the business well over 100 million pounds out of landfills, um, and that is every year. And that's touching. We have grown this over the last 12 or 13 years, and have a ton of clients, and it's spread spread amongst them all. But man, it's fascinating to see that, like, some idea that I had in a dorm room is now like 100 million pounds, weight significantly more than that a year.
Yeah.
It's like,
That's cool.
and that's just
Yeah.
going to keep going. And we're not alone. Like, and there's so much room in this space for innovators, and we're going to continue to see them. And whenever there's innovation in this space, everyone benefits.
And so, as we round out our time together, tell us like what is next for Recyclops? Like we're closing out of 2025, we're coming into 2026. And what are you excited about for your company?
Yeah, I'm really excited. We've kind of identified the four verticals that we operate in. It's, small pickups, which is the diapers, the residential, small retail, hospital, food waste. We touch all these, programs that touch all these random things. Small, kind of the gig economy, little pickups. Manufacturing space is an area that I'm super excited about, and see we're doing a lot there and have a lot more opportunities there. Construction and demolition, and then retail. Frankly speaking, the space that I expect us to spend the most time really focused on in this next year is retail. It's we have built up the infrastructure to solve the problem this year, but we're solving it with a single player, and there's lots of players. I mean, everyone from the Walmarts of the world to 7-Eleven to Michael's, they all have this same problem. This isn't unique. And we have the infrastructure to solve that, and the know-how. to stand up the infrastructure if we need. Oh, we need it in this area. We don't have it there. We know how to stand that up because we've done it before. And so really excited about that. I mean, I want to, double, triple the amount of impact that we had in this year, next year. And I think that frankly will be easy. Because we got a lot of, wind in our sails going in the right direction. And it's an exciting, it felt like 12 years or whatever, 13, I don't know how many years of like building this up. And now it's like, oh, hey, we were ready at the right time.
I love that because it's such a classic example of, oh, what an overnight success. It's like, no, it's just been building the infrastructure for more than a decade, and that shows. And that, frankly, Sabira, then to round out what's going to give me hope into 2026. This conversation is going to give me hope into 2026. Let's get more material going. You have a full beard's worth of material diverted from landfill, so that's good.
There we go. No, we're super excited about what 2026 holds, and doing what we're doing and continuing to improve it, and do better with what we are doing, and to do more. I want to sprint. I don't feel tired at all. 12 years, like there's no burnout here, man. I'm ready to rock and freaking roll.
Wow.
Excellent.
Inspiring. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Awesome.